Welcome back. We're reading chapter 8 of the book Primitive Mythology by Joseph Campbell. And we are almost done with section 2 of chapter 8, which is on the topic of Our Lady of the Mammoths. And V.A. Gordakov, developing this idea in connection with the context of Mezin, suggests that in the geometrical motifs of the swastika, rhombus, and zigzag band or meander, we may recognize a mythological constellation of bird, specifically stork, nest, and serpent. The same motifs, it will be recalled, appeared as a fully developed ornamental syndrome in the much later ceramic art of the Samara style, circa 4500 to 3500 BC, which was developed in one of the chief areas of the High Neolithic directly southward of the Ukraine and just across the Black Sea. And it was merely by chance that when finally in 1930, and was it merely by chance that when finally in 1932 a household shrine was found containing female images, the number present within the shrine was precisely 3. The site of this important discovery was on the right bank of the River Don at Kostienki, some 20 miles south of Voronezh. And in all, there were found in the same station 7 fairly well-preserved female figurines made of mammoth ivory, limestone, and marl, besides the large number shattered to bits, a plaque of stone engraved with the figure of a woman, a few medallions bearing representations of the female genitals, and some little animals made of marl. The figurines in the niche were a badly preserved figure in mammoth ivory without its head, but with well-engraved indications of a large necklace hanging from the shoulders to the breast, a large, perhaps unfinished figurine, the largest of the Russian series, we are told, but its precise dimensions were not given in the rough and ready Russian report. H. Kuhn has estimated its height to be about 1 foot. Made of limestone, but intentionally broken, and the 4 pieces then apparently thrown into the niche, and an ill-made figure with a round head either of mammoth tusk or of bone. The niche itself was in the northeastern corner of a dwelling, about 6 feet away from the fireplace, a rounded area, about 2 feet 8 inches across, 1 foot 8 inches high, and some 5 feet deep, within which there was nothing but these 3 enigmatic statuettes. The most fascinating and tantalizing sight of all, however, which suggests more questions than I can even enumerate in the present chapter, is at Malta in the Lake Baikal region, about 55 miles northwest of Irkutsk, on the Bailea River. Just here, we recall, are the chief centers of shamanism today, whence we have already learned of the animal mother by whom the shaman is nourished during his mysterious period of initiation. Here, too, is the center from which a considerable part of the arts and some of the races of pre-Columbian North America were derived, including the Algonquins, of whom both the Blackfeet and Ojibwe are representative examples. One Soviet school of anthropology has classified the Vogel and Ostiak of the nearby Yenisei River basin as Americanoid, and the former curator of primitive and prehistoric art at the Brooklyn Institute of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Herbert Spinden, placed precisely here the Mesolithic Neolithic culture center from which he derived what he termed the American Indian culture complex, circa 2500 to 2000 BC. A complex, the main traits of which would now seem best represented by the recently studied mound builder remains of the so-called Adena people, circa 800 BC to 700 AD, of the Ohio Valley, and to the earliest signs of which in the Red Lake site, New York, a C14 dating of 2450 plus or minus 260 BC has just been tentatively assigned. We are surely, therefore, one way or another, at the crucial center of an archaic cultural continuum, running on the one hand back to the ordination rock shelter of La Salle, on the other forward to the Blackfoot buffalo dance of the 19th century AD, and then again to the modern shamanism of the Tungus, Buryats, Ostyaks, Vogels, Tatars, even Lapps and Finns. Here were found no less than 20 female statuettes of mammoth ivory from 1¼ inches to 5¼ inches tall, one represented as though clothed in a cave lion's skin, the others nude. But in India and the Near East, the usual animal mount of the goddess was the lion. In Egypt, Sekhmet was a lioness, and in the arts both of the Hittites and the modern Yoruba of Nigeria, the goddess stands poised on the lion, nursing her child. Some 14 animal burials were found in Malta, 6 of the Arctic fox. Do we think of renard and coyote? 6 of deer, in each case with the hindquarters and antlers missing, suggesting that the animals must have been flayed before burial, perhaps to furnish shamanistic attire. 1 of the head and neck of a large bird, 1 of the foot of a mammoth. 6 flying birds and 1 swimming of mammoth ivory, all representing either geese or ducks, were also found, along with an ivory fish with a spiral labyrinth stippled upon its side. An ivory baton suggesting a shaman's staff, and finally, most remarkably, the skeleton of a rickety 4-year-old child with a copious accompaniment of mammoth ivory ornamentation. The little skeleton was found lying on its back in the crouch or fetus posture, but with its head turned to the left and facing the east, the point of the rising or rebirth of the sun. Over the grave was curved a large mammoth tusk, and within were many signs of a highly ceremonious burial. There was a great deal of red coloring matter in the grave, a common finding in Paleolithic sites as well as in the burial mounds of the North American Adena complex. And encircling the head was a delicate crown or forehead band of mammoth ivory. The child had worn also a bracelet of the same material and a fine necklace of 6 octagonal and 120 flat ivory beads, from which a bird-like ornamental pendant hung. A second pendant, also in the form of a flying bird, lay in the grave, as well as 2 decorated medallions. One of the latter seems to have served as a buckle. The other, somewhat larger, showed on one side 3 cobra-like wavy serpents, scratched or engraved, and on the other a stippled design showing a spiral of 7 turns, with 3 spiraling S-forms enclosing it, the earliest spirals known to the history of art. We are clearly in the Paleolithic province where the serpent labyrinth and rebirth themes already constitute a symbolic constellation, joined to the imagery of the sunbird and the shaman flight, with the goddess in her classic role of protectress of the hearth, mother of man's second birth, and lady of the wild things and of the food supply. She is here a patroness of the hunt, just as among planters she is the patroness of fields and crops. We cannot yet tell from the evidence whether we are to think with Frobenius and Megan of a plant-oriented people that had moved up into a difficult but rewarding northern terrain of the hunt, or vice versa, of a northern hunting race, some of whose symbols were later to penetrate to the south. But what is surely clear is that a firm continuum has been established from Lake Baikal to the Pyrenees of the mythology of the mammoth hunters, in which the paramount image was the naked goddess. Moreover, an idea can be gained of the possible relationship of the shamanistic imagery of the mammoth ivory birds to the character of this goddess from a glance at the Eskimo mythology of the Old Woman of the Seals. Whence the earliest Eskimos came, or when they reached their circumpolar habitat, we do not know. But some part of northeast Siberia, strongly colored by the culture of Lake Baikal zone, would now seem to have been their likely homeland, and circa 300 BC would be about the earliest possible date for their arrival. In the walrus ivory carving of the Punuk period of the Bering Strait in Alaska Eskimo, circa 500 to 1500 AD, where the naked female form and a fine sense of geometric ornamentation are prominent features. Likewise, in the shamanism of the Eskimos, their stone lamps, bone harpoons, tailoring of skins, and half-subterranean lodges, we recognize what must have been a more or less direct inheritance of the arts and mythologies of the Paleolithic Great Hunt. The Old Woman of the Seals sits in her dwelling in front of a lamp beneath which there is a vessel to receive the dripping oil. She is known also as Pinga, Sedna, and the food dish. And it is either from the lamp or from the dark interior of her dwelling that she sends forth the food animals of the people, the fish, the seals, the walruses, and the whales. But when it happens that a certain filthy kind of parasite begins to fasten itself in numbers about her head, she becomes angry and withholds her boons. The word for the parasite is agdlerut, which also means abortion or stillborn child. Pinga is offended, it is said, by the Eskimo practice of abortion, but also, as a jiggerjook has told us, she looks for the souls of animals and does not like to see too many of them killed. The blood and entrails must be covered up after a caribou or caribou not returned to life through proper attention to the hunting ritual is no less an abortion, a stillborn child, of the old woman herself, than a human baby prematurely delivered. And so when these agdlerut began to afflict her, the people presently notice that their food supply has begun to fail, and it becomes the task of some highly competent shaman to undertake in trance the very dangerous journey to her dwelling to relieve the old woman, the food dish, of her pain. On the way, the shaman must first traverse the land of the happy dead, Arsisut, the land of those who live in abundance, after which he must cross an abyss in which, according to the earliest authors, there is a wheel as slippery as ice, which is always turning. Next, he must traverse a great boiling kettle full of dangerous seals, after which he arrives at the old woman's dwelling, which, however, is guarded by terrible beasts, ravenous dogs, or ravenously biting seals. And finally, when he has entered the house itself, he must cross an abyss by means of a bridge as narrow as the edge of a knife. We are not told by what art his deed of assuaging the old woman is accomplished. But in the end, she is relieved both of the parasites and of her wrath. The shaman returns, and presently, so do the seals. The title of W. Somerset Maugham's novel, The Razor's Edge, which is drawn from a verse of the Hindu Kanta Upanishad, wherein the mind is exhorted to enter upon the path to liberation from death, yet warned of the dangers and difficulties of the way. Arise, awake, approach the high boons and comprehend them. The sharpened edge of a razor, hard to traverse, a difficult path is this, so say the wise. Should suffice to suggest something of the general context of spiritual experience to which the Eskimo figure of a shaman crossing an abyss on the blade of a knife refers. We may think also of the gallant Sir Lancelot in Craig de Troyes' courtly 12th century romance, La Chevalier de la Charre, the Knight of the Cart, crossing the very painful sword bridge to the rescue of his Lady Guinevere the Queen from the land of death. And if anyone asks of me the truth, says Crichton, there never was such a bad bridge, nor one whose flooring was so bad. A polished, gleaming sword across the cold stream, stout and firm, and as long as 2 lances. The water cascading beneath, furthermore, was a wicked-looking stream, as swift and raging, black and turgid, fierce and terrible, as if it were the devil's stream. And it is so dangerous and bottomless that anything falling into it would be as completely lost as if it fell into the salt sea. 2 lions or leopards were tied to a great rock at the farther end of this bridge, and the water and the bridge and the lions were so terrible to behold that anyone standing before them all would tremble with fear. We have noticed that among the earliest remains in India of the culture complex of the hieratic city-state, dating from circa 2000 BC, representations have been found of figures in yoga posture. There is also a little scene from that period showing an apparition of the goddess among the boughs of a tree. And in the much later path of yoga, the goddess and the goddess are represented in the great gates of the Sanchi stupas, circa 200 AD, where they are represented respectively by the sun wheel of the Buddha's law and the goddess of the elephants, Gaja Lakshmi. But we have here broached another abyss, which lures us beyond even our longest archaeological fathom line. For the goddess who now has shown herself at the very dawn of the first day of our own species, already attended by her well-known court, her serpents and her doves and swans, the lion, the fish ponds, and the razor's edge by which her shaman lover is to come to her, to relieve her of her sterile wrath and make her fruitful again. The little child in its confirmation clothes in the grave womb, well prepared for rebirth and watching for the Sunday of unquenched soul invictus arising from the mother's womb, is still the one who can truly say, "No one has lifted my veil." So that ends section 2 in chapter 8. Next time we'll start section 3. Thanks for joining me. Take care.